Hello, Senior to Seniors audience. Today I have a special guest. Every so often, something comes along that makes you stop and ask, why didn't we always do it this way? Imagine this. Your mother wakes up, it's 7 p.m., and she's struggling to breathe. Her heart condition is flaring. You face the same gut wrenching choice millions of families face every year. Rush her to a crowded emergency room, sit under fluorescent lights for 6 hours, expose her to infections, disorient her with the chaos of the hospital, or pray it passes on its own. For too long, there's been no third option. Today's guest has dedicated the last 2.5 decades to creating that third option, and what a third option it is. He began his career in 1998 in medical device sales at Stryker, learned the language of healthcare from the ground up, and built himself into one of the most decorated growth strategists in the industry, with stops at Teladoc, Evacor, and ultimately the Senior Vice President of Growth for Optum Home and Community Care, the healthcare arm of the largest health company on earth, where he led the expansion of NaviHealth, Landmark Health, and Optum at Home. But here's what separates today's guests from the career executives who stay comfortable at the big table. He left it. He walked away from a position at Optum, one of the most powerful healthcare organizations in the world, because he believed something smaller, leaner, and more purpose-driven could do something that a giant institution simply couldn't. In November 2023, he joined Care2U as Chief Growth Officer. 9 months later, he was named CEO. And Care2U is not your ordinary healthcare company. It was founded by emergency room physicians who had watched seniors, your parents, my parents, your grandparents, spend hours waiting in overcrowded ERs for conditions that, with the right tools and the right team, could be treated safely, effectively, and compassionately at home. Today, Care2U dispatches physician-led teams to your front door within 2 to 4 hours. 2 providers per visit, one in person, one on a live telehealth call with a board-certified ER or hospitalist physician. They bring the x-ray machine. They bring the IV. They bring the lab. They treat pneumonia, congestive heart failure, cellulitis, dehydration, conditions that have historically sent seniors into the hospital, spiral, and sometimes never brought them back the same. Care2U recently claimed the inaugural Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield Innovation in Healthcare Award. They've been named to the New York Digital Health 100 twice. Their CEO was named a 2025 Healthcare Hero. Real families across New York are writing reviews that say things like, Care2U was a godsend. It saved my mother a trip to the hospital, and from the intake person to the dispatcher to the visiting tech to the doctor, they have the system humming. He is also a podcaster himself, and many of his podcasts are still available for you to listen to. It's called The Healthcare Grind, and he's not doing any right at this time, but boy, there's a long list of great interviews he has done. He's one of the most innovative minds in early stage healthcare. So today, the interviewer becomes the interviewee, and sometimes something tells me he knows exactly what makes a great conversation. He's a speaker, a strategist, an advisor to early stage healthcare companies, a connector of payers and providers, and most importantly, a man who believes that where you heal matters and as much as how you're treated. Today, we welcome LON HECHT to my podcast. LON, welcome to my podcast.
Jim, thank you so much for having me on. That was the best intro I have ever had and probably the best I will ever have. I really appreciate that.
Well, I'm so glad to have you here. And as I mentioned to you, I'm making this podcast available about 3 months prior to its normal drop time because I'm so anxious for everyone to hear this podcast. I believe it's so important for people to hear. So tell us a little bit what I didn't talk about in my introduction of you, Lon. Tell us a little bit more about you, maybe your family, and more that people should know.
Well, sure. Family is first for me. Been married for 25 plus years. Live at the Jersey Shore, not the Jersey Shore you picture when you see on TV. Let's forget about that as best we possibly can. And I've got two grown children. And I will tell you that in the background, I actually started in pharmaceuticals back around 1995. So I think I'm approaching more that 30-year mark than the 25-year mark.
Boy, you've done this for quite a while.
I have, but I'm at that point in my career where this really is about giving back, and it's about doing something that can be game changing for an industry. And our industry is incredibly costly. It doesn't treat people necessarily where they want to be treated, how they want to be treated, and I think that's really important. So I'm on a mission to try and change that. And Care to You is doing an innovative model. I'm not aware of anyone else doing a model like ours. We're not everywhere in the country, but there are things that I can tell your listeners to look out for to be able to find levels of care that may be somewhat in line with what we're doing. So we can talk about that a little bit more in the episode.
Fantastic. And my hope is that you're able to take this around the country, not just to New York, but to where I'm at in Texas, and to where I used to live in Oregon, and where I'm from in Iowa, and every place in between and around. So tell me, you had one of the most powerful purchase in American healthcare. You were the senior vice president at Optum, part of the largest healthcare company on earth. And I would guess most people spend their career protecting that kind of a position. Uh, and you walked away from it. What did you see at Care to You that was worth this huge risk? Or maybe it isn't a risk at all, but tell us about that.
Well, it really spoke to me. So, first of all, no knock to my Optum colleagues. I loved my time there. I was with a company called NaviHealth. We were acquired, like so many other companies, by Optum. And I spent a good 3+ years at Optum. And fantastic company, but I had a pain in the position that I was in that wasn't being solved. And part of the solution that I sold was we had to be able to manage inpatient and ER level costs better than we were. And we just didn't have a lever to be able to do it. So that's one piece. I had a pain. On the other side, I've been serving seniors for years. Now, keep in mind, Care to You is not just about ER level and hospital level care in the home for seniors.
Okay.
We see 18 and above, and probably we'll start seeing younger ages from that, from there down. But this really lined up with my mission, and that is serving seniors, which I absolutely love to do. And it served a need that I had at Optum, and that was trying to find a way to be able to manage some of these spiraling healthcare costs by bringing that care into the home. Because what's really interesting is by bringing ER and hospital level care into the home, we can actually do this at about a third of the cost of what it would cost to be in the ER or in the hospital. And that's for Medicare. If you're talking about your traditional insurers, the ones that most people get through their employer, it's actually about a sixth of the cost, right? So it's a real game changer from a financial standpoint. But more importantly, I truly believe, and there's data out there, that people heal better at home because I mean, just imagine, you brought up a scenario, but imagine somebody that has dementia or Alzheimer's. Worst place you could be is in the hospital.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by infections, right? It's foreign. You're getting woken up all night. Being in your home with your family, your pets, being able to walk around in a familiar area, it helps you heal more rapidly. So it lined up with my mission. It lined up with the need that I had. When I found out about this company, it was just game on for me. I had to join.
Yeah. I don't know how you would resist from joining. And it's an amazing story, as I've read through it. And it's like, I've got to have it.
Right.
I've got to have this. I've got to be able to tell more people about this so they can have it. About a year ago, I spent 8 hours in the emergency room here in Dallas, Fort Worth with my brother, who's 79 at the time. But 8 hours in that emergency room. And what I saw, it had been a long time since I'd been in an emergency room, Lon. But what I saw were people in fear, people that didn't know what to do next, where to go. I mean, 8 hours. And I saw people that were in pain. I saw people suffering.
Right.
My brother actually volunteered for other people to go in front of him because
Right.
he wasn't in the same pain. So, is there, with this care, is there any fall off that you've seen, that you anticipate that you'll see from going to an emergency room to having someone come to your home?
So no, but I'm going to caveat that there are certain things that you should go to the hospital for,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
If you're having a stroke or drooping of the face, or you're having a heart attack, or you had a traumatic head injury and you're on blood thinners, go to the hospital. That's where you belong, right? And that's really what the hospital should serve. But for things like complicated UTIs, dehydration, pneumonia, COVID, CHF or congestive heart failure exacerbation, COPD, DVTs, things like that, we can comfortably treat that in the home. And what's really interesting though is, and you could probably attest to this, when you were there with your brother, you spent a lot of time waiting. How
yeah.
long did you actually spend with a clinician? Probably not a whole lot of time.
No,
Okay.
minutes.
Minutes. The person, so what happens is when we get a call, and it could come from a patient, it could come from a doctor, home health provider, it could come from a care manager or someone like that, we deploy into the home within 2 to 4 hours. We typically send, and it will differ depending on geography because of regulations. But in New York, we're sending a physician assistant, a nurse practitioner, or a paramedic into the home. They work the patient up, and then they bring on this physician via concurrent telehealth, right? So they have eyes and ears on the patient and they work on the care plan together. The clinician in the home is spending about 70 to 75 minutes with that person compared to probably the 5 minutes that your brother spent in the ER with that person. And even with the doctor, they're still spending a good 15 minutes on with that person. And then they're getting wraparound care. We're doing all the care coordination for them, which is really, really important. And they can continue to reach out to us. If they need more care than that initial visit, we can admit them right into the home,
Mm,
into what we would consider hospital level care at home. They would then have remote patient monitoring on them, so we can check their vitals and manage them if they need any kind of escalation. And we're following them for 30 days on that, right? And I think the really cool thing is when you go to the ER, the odds of your doctor knowing what happened are pretty low. Your doctor's probably out of the loop, probably doesn't know it. When you're seeing when a care to you visit is happening, we are coordinating with your primary care physician or the specialist that referred to you. They're getting all of the notes, but more importantly, we'll talk to the doctor and understand how they want to be communicated with. We'll call them after every visit and keep them completely in the loop as to what's going on. That's really important because as people have transitions in care, that's where things get really messy. And if your primary care or your specialist physician doesn't know what happened, that can be a real challenge going forward.
yeah,
So your original question, I went long winded, and I'm sorry about
no,
that.
no.
Is there a degradation care? No, I don't think there's a degradation care, but it's important that they get to the right level of care up front. So if we get a call, we'll triage you, and if we think you're too high acuity, we're going to say go to the ER.
Yeah,
But at the same time, if we think you're too low acuity, we're going to try and get you into your primary care doctor or get you in an in-network urgent care, because I don't want to, the whole don't bring a gun to a knife fight, right? I don't want to overdo something. Like if you can be managed in a different area, we'll do that for you. We have a really good lane that we should stay in, and that's what we try to do.
yeah. And when I was in the emergency room, I recall, I can even see it as I'm talking, someone coming through the doors to my left side, and the guy was clearly having a heart attack.
Right.
Clearly. And the emergency room took him immediately. That's the place for emergency rooms as I see it.
Right place.
You
Yep,
know,
absolutely. But what's nice is when we're in the home, you're not gonna have somebody come in with a heart attack that's bumping your care, right?
yeah.
We're deploying in your home and you have our full attention.
Uh, Why would anybody not want this kind of care available to them? I mean, there are people, I'm sure there are people that said, yeah, this isn't a good thing. What kind of disagreements have people had with what you're doing? Can are
I really don't get disagreements at all. I think the challenge is it's new. That doesn't mean it's bad, and I think people realize it's good. I think it's just that most people don't know about it. We're in the New York market right now, very openly for your listeners. We're planning to expand. We're actually doing some additional fundraising specifically for growth. We're well financed in our market. We're good. but we want to expand into other markets. So we're going to go raise some capital and be able to go out there and do that in the future. Even in New York, where we're doing great, I bet you 95% of the folks in New York don't even have a clue that we're available.
Mm,
It takes time,
yeah.
right? It takes time for people to learn of something new and then to break a habit. That's the other thing. And what's kind of interesting is you would think that hospitals would look at this and be like, oh, goodness, this is competition for us. Hospitals love working with us because most people don't realize that when you go to the hospital, if you're Medicare, you go to the hospital, they get readmission penalties if you get readmitted after a visit. A lot of them work with us and ask us to go in when a patient has any kind of exacerbation or flare up after they've already been in the hospital. They'll deploy us to the home to make sure that we can stabilize them and keep them in the home rather than a readmission. They love us for that. And they love us for a lot of other things that we do for them as well. So we actually have really good synergistic relationships with folks around. But I think the big thing is just not enough people know about us.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
going to take time.
yeah. So, if I were keeping score, okay, I usually do two column scoring all the time where I'll put pros and cons, one in each column. And I look to find both, right? The pros and cons. And I'm just not seeing the cons to this kind of care. And I'm sure it's going to catch on and it will be recognized in all the states that you're going to be reaching out to in the future. So after 25 years inside the system, health plans, hospital networks, and post acute care, you know where the bodies are buried, so to speak, right?
I do.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, what is the single most fundamental flaw in how America's been delivering care, especially to seniors?
Boy, that's a big question. What do I think is the single? Um, that's a really challenging one for me. Um, I think that I think there are a lot of things. So maybe I'll give a couple of examples rather than just go into any one. I think the system's really disjointed. And
Yeah.
I think that's really challenging, right? When you have people that are getting imaging done all over the place and there's no standard electronic medical record for folks and all this duplicative care that not just is the system paying for, but seniors are paying for. And it's disjointed and things that could be picked up sooner are not getting picked up because that information isn't being shared. I think that's one of the biggest challenges is just information is not freely shared. That's a big one. I also think one of the biggest issues, and maybe I should have gone here first, is our system rewards something called fee for service. Are you familiar with like fee for service and value based care? I'll go really high level on this.
Okay.
There are really two different models. The way, for the most part, that insurance reimburses is called fee for service. So doctors and health systems and everyone, they get paid for every service they do. So what is the motivation?
Yeah.
To do as many services as you can do, right?
Yeah.
Then there's this newer thing that everybody's been trying to get to called value-based care, which is saying this is more on the preventative care side. So we're making the doctors and the hospitals and others responsible for some of the cost as well. And they do well if they can manage costs. And the idea is let's focus more on preventative care rather than as much on sick care. Let's keep them healthy. Everybody wins.
Hmm.
The challenge is right now, you've got doctors with their feet in two different boats,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And 95% of them are in the fee for service boat, and only 5% or so is in the value based care. So doctors are always going to act the way the fee for service one is because it's the primary driver. So the problem is right now, in my opinion, in healthcare is that people are still getting rewarded for doing more rather than doing what's necessary to keep people healthy. And that has to change. And I do think the government's recognizing that and trying to push more people into this value based care. It's taking time. I would have thought we'd be further along now than we are because 10 years ago, I thought we'd be where we should be now. And I still think we're 10, 15 years away from being where we should be.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think that's the big challenge.
healthcare is a huge monster. It's this big thing, and I would guess the bureaucracy in itself is going to take years to do anything, to do the change that you've just talked about.
Right.
And so it's going to come. It's got to come because it's broken. And so tell us about on a visit
Sure.
when someone gives you a call, you send, or there's two providers included in that call. One's at the bedside and one physician's on a telehealth call. Talk about that and why that is, why it works.
Okay. So, and just to be clear, it's actually a telehealth video call. So it's actually live video, right? Which is very important.
Yeah.
So, why that model works is I think you can do it in a cost effective way and still provide the highest level of care because our care is all doctor driven, right? It's all going to be provider driven from a doctor standpoint. So we deploy into the home. We're in the home 2 to 4 hours. We shoot for 2 hours in New York. It can take you an hour to go a block.
Yeah,
So we have
exactly.
to say 2 to 4 hours. You know that works.
Yeah.
They get in the home, they get the history, they work the patient up, do everything like that. Get vitals, everything. They bring the physician on concurrent telehealth. They work on the care plan together. At that, they're doing lab draws. We can do point of care testing. We can do stat labs, which means there are a lot of complicated labs that we can turn around in 4 to 6 hours, like really complicated labs. And we have lab boxes all over the city, all over the different counties to be able to drop and turn those very quickly. We can bring oxygen concentrators, or we do bring oxygen concentrators into the home. We can deploy imaging into the home, EKGs, all of that. We can do wound care, infusions, minor surgical procedures, all kinds of things in the home. So we're in the home. We work up the patient, doctors on telehealth. They put together the care plan that is implemented. The goal is to treat and be done in one visit, but some patients are going to need more,
Mhm.
right? Some are going to be like, if you went to the hospital, they might put you in something called observation, which is let's keep our eye on them overnight or whatever. That costs a ton of money.
Yeah.
But and often the patient is just sitting in the hallway for 12 hours. It's crazy.
Hmm.
And then they might end up hospitalized. So we have the ability to do all that right in the home. And if they hit criteria, we can admit them right then and there. What's really cool about our model is, and I think why we're doing so well is I speak payer, and payer is a health plan. Really, a payer, when I say that, means anybody that pays for healthcare. So it's typically an insurer, or it could be the government, it could be anyone like that. I know how to talk that language very well.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of insurers. This is a new concept for them that are paying for this now, right? Which is fantastic. And what's really interesting is most of them are paying for it, and the coinsurance that you have to pay, it's a copay, a specialist copay, right? So when you go to the hospital, you pay an ER copay, which is very expensive. You get put in observation, you get a higher copay. A hospital, hospitalization, it's higher. We're typically a specialist copay, which is really nice. So we've really worked this model in a way that I feel like really works for everyone.
Yeah. It's just amazing. But here's a question I know
Sure.
everybody's going to have. Um, if this is so wonderful, if it sounds so wonderful, um, does insurance actually cover it? And how do people access it if insurance does cover it?
If they do or they don't, or both.
Yeah, do they?
Do or I'll tell you both. So one, a lot of insurers are covering this, right?
Okay.
So I have contracts with a lot of insurers, and they're covering it and charging a specialist copay. So it's like a $30 copay or 35.
Yeah.
Which is
Wow.
fantastic.
Yeah.
If I don't have an insurer where I have an advanced rate, and all that means is a rate that actually covers my costs, I can always bill that insurer for a house call, which I get reimbursed less than what it costs me to deliver care. If that's the case, worst case is we would ask for an enhanced care coordination fee out of pocket from the patient.
Okay.
The good news is they know exactly what that fee is up front. No surprises. If they went to the ER, I can't guarantee, but I can almost guarantee it's going to cost them more with their insurance to go to the ER than that enhanced care coordination fee and any kind of specialist copay with us. And then there's a good chance they'll end up in observation or hospital or hospitalized there in the hospital, and the costs will just keep compounding from there.
Yeah.
So the beauty is, even if we don't have that advanced rate and we ask them for the enhanced care coordination fee out of pocket, it's still probably going to cost them less than it would in the hospital. And the good news is they know about it up front. If they don't want it, they can go to the hospital. 98% have no issue with it.
Yeah.
And the bad part about the hospital is you don't know what it costs you for like a month or two or three
No.
until the bill comes, and then you're surprised. And we're always surprised no matter what. It's never a good surprise.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're really upfront with folks on that. Can I say one thing before I forget? Because I think it's
Sure.
really important. We're getting really into the episode, and I want to say, yes, we're in New York right now, and we plan to expand. And very, very openly, Texas is on the roadmap as one of the expansion plans. I've got like 5 states in mind right this minute. But just because we're not there, this is not a care to you plug here. This is about, you can get high acuity care in the home. in most markets, you can find some level of this. Look, it's probably not going to be our model. It's probably not going to be to the hospital level care at home level, but you can do a lot of things. So, what I would ask in your market is I would search for things like mobile urgent care,
Okay.
high acuity care in the home. I would go and Google that in your county and see what comes up. I'd ask your doctor and I'd say, do you know of any mobile urgent care providers that can come to our home? That's going to get them started. They'll be able to find somebody likely in each market that can come in the home and provide some of this care. They can probably handle a lot of the stuff. Maybe not our level of acuity, maybe not with all of our capabilities, but for the folks that are listening, it's probably going to be able to help you with 60, 70% of the things that you would want help with, just maybe not the other 30, 40% that you would want help with. So just because we're not in your market doesn't mean that you can't find that care. I would look for that care. One thing I'll say is our website is care2u.com. It's CARE number 2 letter u.com. Put a form in, let me know where you are, and let me know if it's something you're interested in. I'll put you in our system, and when we end up in your geography, I'll let you know.
Oh,
Right. So feel free to let me know who's interested. Always looking for new partners.
well, I love
And
that, and I've got to tell you, when my brother went to the emergency room, he was visiting from Oregon, and when his issue came up, we didn't take the opportunity to go looking for mobile urgent care or anything. We went to the emergency room.
right,
So I appreciate you mentioning that there may be um, that type of care, not to your level, not the way you do it necessarily, but might be available in the home. I can tell you, being a type 2 diabetes uh, subject myself, I had a wound on my foot and I didn't even want to walk. Lon, I
right,
didn't feel like I could even walk because I would just make things worse. Already lost a toe because of the type 2 diabetes that I have, and I found somebody, wound care, that level of service, certainly not yours, that
right.
came to my home, and the level of service they provided me was so much better than I think I probably would have gotten by dragging somewhere else or even waiting a few days. That was my fear. Can I afford to wait a few days to go to my
Right.
podiatrist,
Right.
and have him care for it? So those kind of services are so important to me. I just want to mention before we go some numbers that I have here, and
Sure.
the numbers are staggering. That the U.S. average of hospital readmission rate is nearly 15% nationally, and in New York, I think you mentioned it's even higher than that.
Definitely higher
Yeah,
than that.
yeah,
Yeah.
for
I was
COPD.
thinking 18 or 20. Yeah.
Yeah, and for COPD patients in traditional hospitals, some studies show 6-month readmission rates approaching 87% of what I've been able to pull up. Not your numbers, but what
Right.
I was able to pull up. And Care2U says it can cut readmissions by 75%. So, boy, I just don't see this going anywhere but up, Lon. Uh,
I agree. I'm
um,
bought in.
yeah.
You sold me, Jim. I'm in.
Well, yeah. Well, and it sold me too because I was asked you before we started, how do I get in on this? And I see this as something that more people are going to want, and more people perhaps are going to demand. Right.
I completely agree. And as more people learn about it, more people are going to demand it. No question about it.
So when I do interviews like this, Lon, I always ask when I get to the end, I'm sure there's one question I didn't ask, or there's something I didn't mention that you wish I would have, or that I should have asked but failed to do. If there's one question that I should have asked that you wish I would have mentioned, can you think of something right now that might add to this podcast?
You know what? I think you've hit the key questions, but one thing I will say is um, the squeaky wheel gets the grease on this kind of thing, right? So talk to your doctors about it and let them know that you're interested in care like this because then your primary care doctors are going to know I've got to keep my eyes open for partnerships and people that I can work with that do this. And even your health plan, they're all what's kind of cool. I'll say this is a lot of them, and I'm not going to get into a debate whether you should do fee for service Medicare or Medicare Advantage, because they both have their advantages and disadvantages openly.
Sure.
But a lot of the Medicare Advantage plans are picking this up and covering this, right? So something you could always do is dig in a little bit deeper when it comes time to open enrollment. And if you're somebody that tends to spend a lot of time in the ER, or in the hospital, try and find out if you have any that actually cover this type of care for you, right? Because that would be a huge advantage for you when it comes time to having a need for care. Only other thing I'll mention, I just want to make sure your listeners do this, is it's always better to know before you need it. Like you said, when you're done listening to this episode, go to Google, hit mobile urgent care, put your county name in there, find out who the folks are, put it on your fridge, write it down somewhere so you know when you have a need, you've got somebody that you can call. I think it's important. You don't want to wait until it's too late.
I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's hugely important. Something that I haven't done, didn't do, but will do, and I hope my listeners will do as well. Lon Hecht, I'm sure I'm going to be hearing a lot more about you, and I'm so anxious to share this podcast with so many people directly, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you so much for being on the Senior to Seniors podcast. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you.